Scheming Symmetry is all about being fair, charitable, and kind.
Aww.
You see, this single black sorcery allows both players to search their decks for a card and put it on top.
You're so nice.
And don't worry, we're not playing any cards to take advantage of that card on top. Nothing like Vensuvan Drifter or anything.
Huh?
You see, with Drifter, if there's a creature on top of the deck, it becomes a copy of that creature. And there's no chance we have good old spaghetti pants to search out. I wouldn't do that to you.
Wait a second.
Nope, no way. So if we're playing against you today, you have nothing to worry about. Just a little charitable holiday spirit with no strings attached. I promise. Emrakul for 3 mana. Sounds pretty good. We'll take the play. Gigantha. Yes, please. 7. It's a little bit lackluster, but I think we'll keep this. Start with our Polluted Delta. We'll fetch. I think we're just going to get basic Swamp. We'll start with Thoughtseize. Opponent with Counterspell, Drown in the Loch, Preordain, and Thoughtseize. I think we're going to limit the information that they have. We're going to get rid of the Thoughtseize. Start with a Watery Grave. That was their draw for turn into a Preordain. They put 1 top, 1 bottom. We draw into his Firebluff Canal. Actually meant to play out the Steam Vents, but that's fine. Play it out, pass turn. Misty Rainforest, fetch. Watery Grave Shock, puts down to 15, and that's all they do. Okay. And we draw into a Ragavan, and I think we're going to draw a counter out of their hand here and now. We'll dash in Ragavan. Move to combat. It's met by a Fatal Push. We'll play out our other Spire Bluff, pass turn back. They play out their basic island. We knew about that. All right, we have our combo. We're not going to be getting it off just yet. Play out Steam Vents, tapped, and we're going to pass it back. Otawara, draw into a Thoughtseize, not bad. Let's get a look at what they're working with. Thoughtseize, opponent with a counter spell. And they have 4 cards in hand. We're going to play out a land, and we're going to put Gigantha to hand. Pass turn back. Flooded Strand, 2 mana from our opponent, and a Murktide Regent. Fetch, end of turn. We'll get our Xander's Lounge. Draw into a Fable. Fable's a little too slow. Play out Gigantha, met by a Drown in the Loch. Opponent has 3 cards in hand, attacks with a 7/7. We're down 9 life. Untap, draw into a Bowmaster. 3 mana will play out a Drifter. It resolves Preordain on top. Okay, an opponent has a Bitter Triumph. They're down to 12 life. Hits down the Drifter. With the dragon attacking us down to 2 on the next turn, and our only out being Otawara, we're as good as dead. We needed our Drifter to survive to have a chance. Murktide does what it does, and we're on to game 2. Okay, we're going to pull Fatal Push and consider. We're going to bring in Flusterstorm and Hearse. Feel Gigantha. And 7 looks fine. We'll keep it. Start with basic island, and I think we'll lead on a Preordain. Land. I'll put 1 on the bottom, 1 on top. Watery Grave, Shock. Likely a Thoughtseize. It is. I think they're priced into our Ragavan here. Yep. Untap. Draw into a Steam Vents. Scalding Tarn, fetch. Shock into Blood Crypt, and we'll Thoughtseize them. Shadow, Drown, and Preordain. We'll take the Shadow. Polluted Delta. Opponent with a Preordain. I think we're going to Spell Pierce that. Untap. Draw into a Fable. That's excellent. Shock out our Steam Vents. Fable. Trigger. Pass back. They fetch end of turn. Watery Grave. Shock. Paying costs. And they have a Fatal Push. So we know their hand. Drown in the Loch and Watery Grave. There's the Watery Grave. Shock down to 11. Back our way. Draw into a Bowmaster. Not terrible. And I don't think we're going to get rid of anything. We'll start with a Consider. Preordain on top. We'll keep that on top. And I think we'll fire that off right now. Preordain, Bowmaster, and a Xander's Lounge. And I think we'll top both of those. Play out the Xander's Lounge. Pass turn back. Opponent flashes in a Dress Down end of turn. They draw a card. Untap. Inquisition. Probably take our Bowmaster. Back our way. We're going to draw another Bowmaster. Fable's going to flip. And we'll just pass turn back. Polluted Delta, Drown in the Loch, okay. We'll flash in a Bowmaster. Opponent down to 10. Flusterstorm the Drown. Opponent with a Death Shadow, it's a 3/3. Draw into a Ragavan. We're going to put Gigantha to hand, and we're just going to pass turn back. The next few turns, the combination of my Reflection and Bowmaster are able to hold off the growing Death Shadow until a Tenacious Tidebinder comes down and ruins my fun. Draw Drifter. Drifter's interesting. We're going to start by dashing in Ragavan. Move to combat, attack for 2, no blocks, trigger. We find a Consider. We'll use it. We find another Drifter on top. We'll put it to the graveyard. We draw into a Scheming Symmetry. 3 mana, play out our Drifter, pass turn back. Ragavan back to hand. Drifter triggers, no. Opponent attacks for 9. We'll chump block with the Bowmaster. Back our way. Drawn to a Fable, Lightning Bolt on top. We'll start with the Fable. Resolves, trigger, dash in Ragavan. Opponent's paying costs, counterspell. Okay. Black mana, Scheming Symmetry. And I would like to choose Emrakul the Aeons Torn. Move to combat. We'll use Drifter's ability. Attack, opponent scoops, go into game 3. An unfortunate start to game 3, I have to mulligan to 6, but even more unfortunate is my opponent's circumstances as they mulligan all the way down to 4 cards. They did their best, but the deficit to start the game was just way too much for them to overcome, and we are easily able to outvalue and beat them down with double Fable of the Mirror Breaker. We convincingly win the game, and we're 1-0. Alright friends, match 2. We're on the play. Gigantha, let's go. 7 looks fine, we'll keep it. Start with the Watery Grave, we'll shock that out, and we will pass turn. Opponent cycles a Street Wraith, so we're playing against Living End here. Scalding Tarn. End of turn we're going to consider. We'll put Fable in the graveyard. Drawn to a Lightning Bolt. Need to find a second land here. Find a Bowmaster. Fire off another Consider. Ragavan. I'll put that in the graveyard. We draw Fatal Push. No second land. That's brutal. We'll pass it back. Fetch end of turn. They get a Watery Grave. And to consider. Okay, so this is not what I thought it was. This is Death Shadow. Once again, opponent with a Preordain. Put 2 on the bottom. Coming our way. See if we can find a land. Alright, we got there. Not the one we're looking for, but we found one. I'll play out the island, pass turn. So we found our second land, which gives us a little more freedom with our hand, able to cast out our Bowmasters and Fatal Push a Death Shadow with Spell Pierce backup. Also, because of the nature of their deck, our opponent did most of the work for us, putting themselves down to 6 life with another Shock and a Dismember. With 2 bolts in our hand, all we needed was a single red source to finish the job. They play out a Murktide, and we're having deja vu from the first game last match. And after 3 more draws, we still couldn't find our red source. We succumbed to the big blue dragon and are down a game. Okay, opponent doesn't really know what we're doing. We're going to board out a Bolt, a Consider, and a Thoughtseize. We're going to bring in Hearse, Explosives, and a Flusterstorm. We'll take the play. Gigantha, and our 7 looks pretty good. We'll keep it. We're going to start with the Polluted Delta. We'll fetch Steam Vents, Shock, and a Ragavan. Opponent Scalding Tarn, fetch, Watery Grave, and a Preordain. Looks like Ragavan's hitting. You put 2 on top. I'm guessing the first one's a land for the Ragavan. Drawn to a Fable. Move to combat. Kraken for 2. Trigger Ragavan. There's a Scalding Tarn. Play out a land. This is interesting. Do we play out the Drifter? Do we play out the Fable? I think we get the Fable out first. We'll do that. Trigger. Goblin Shaman. Back their way. 8 cards in hand. Another Preordain. 2 on top. Polluted Delta. Drawn to an Otawara. Fable up to 2. Kind of like everything, to be honest. We're just gonna keep everything. Combat, attack with the team, trigger the Shaman, opponent fetches, Watery Grave Shock, they're down at 12, get a treasure, Ragavan hits, they're down at 8, we find a Consider. We'll use that. Opponent considers in response. Yeah, sure. Put a Thoughtseize to the graveyard, Xander's Lounge, we'll put that in our graveyard. Find a Lightning Bolt. I kind of want to keep this Otawara just in case they have a Murktide, but if they do, I'm not even going to be able to cast the Otawara, so we'll play it out. 3 mana, we'll play the Drifter. We see another Spell Pierce on top. Not bad. You untap, draw, Otawara, Death Shadow, Drifter no, untap, draw, Symmetry on top, which means we have the win next turn. Reflection, we'll push the Shadow, opponent with a Stubborn Denial, Spell Pierce that. Shadow's dead, Fatal Push on the Reflection, sure. I'm going to bolt them, let them know what's up. Alright, game 3. On the draw, I do not like Thoughtseize. We're going to pull all of those, bring in Stern Scolding, a Blood Moon, and an Engineered Explosives. 7 looks pretty good, we'll keep it. Scalding Tarn, fetch, Watery Grave Shock, and a Thoughtseize. They get rid of our Fatal Push. They're at 15. Drawn to a Kolaghan's Command, not bad. I'll play out a Scalding Tarn, and we'll pass turn. The first few turns of this game, we both spend cantripping to ensure that we hit our land drops and are prepared for the threats to come. I attempt a Drifter on turn 4, which is met by a Drown in the Loch, and my opponent follows up on their next turn with double 2/2 Death Shadows with a fetch land up. While we are able to use Lightning Bolt in response to a fetch land to remove the first Death Shadow, the second one presented quite a problem. I played out my Drifter, which was immediately met by a Fatal Push, and now we're in damage control mode. I flash in my Bowmasters for 2 turns worth of chump blocking, but they had us covered with the Bowmasters of their own. I cast out my Kolaghan's Command to try to kill their Bowmasters and buy back my own, but it's met with a Stubborn Denial. So I have one last-ditch effort to try to stabilize. Otawaro the Shadow EOT and then try to resolve my Blood Moon so they can't recast the Shadow. Nope. Counterspell. We proceed to get run over for the final 4 points of damage. We're 1-1. Round 3, we find ourselves paired against Domain Zoo, and we're starting out on the back foot with a mulligan to 6 on the draw. Our opening hand is flush with cantrips, so we spend the early turns of the game scrambling to find removal for their threats. Lightning Bolt deals with an early Ragavan, but not without taking 3 damage off our lands first. Their follow-up is Wild Nacatl, for which we need another removal spell. I play out a Drifter to buy some time, but Leyline Binding eats the Drifter and we take a hit from the Cat Warrior. We're already down to 10 life. We find a fatal push for the cat, but another threat, Bone Crusher Giant, enters the fold. I play out another Drifter, it meets Tribal Flames. Bowmaster is a charm. Fable Token, Leyline Binding, and the Bone Crusher Giant crosses the finish line. We're down a game. But game 2 was just the opposite, where my opponent kept a 1-lander and couldn't answer my Ragavan, so they just scooped it up. We're on to game 3. 7 is land-like, but I do think this is a keep. Definitely need to find a second land though. They start Arid Mesa, nothing else. Alright, we found our second land, which is excellent. We're gonna go with Pluto Delta, fetch, shock in a Blood Crypt, fire off a Thoughtseize. They fetch, it's probably a Stubborn Denial, Triome. Kavu is their only threat, so I think we're gonna get rid of that. Play out a Wooded Foothills, it's coming back our way. Alright, we draw into another land, which is good. We'll play that out, and I'm gonna play out my Ragavan. They fetch end of turn, another Triome. They do not binding end of turn. Basic Plains, 1 mana Chain to the Rocks. I'm going to Spell Pierce that. So this play might look a little strange, and it was. I was thinking of taking them off binding for my Blood Moon, but they wouldn't actually be able to flash in the binding anyway once the Blood Moon was on the board. So, a silly mistake. Drawn to a Thoughtseize. We're going to start by dashing out Ragavan. Combat, hit them for 2, down to 16. We reveal a Scion on the top. I'm not going to be able to cast that one. We'll fire off Thoughtseize, Chain to the Rocks, Stubborn Denial, and a Tribal Flames. I think we're going to take Stubborn Denial, and we'll pass it back. They put Gigantha to hand, play out a land, back to us. The remainder of this game was elementary. I snapped my Thoughtseize to nab the Gigantha out of their hand, and then it was cruise control the rest of the way. Lightning Bolt made light work of their only threat, a Neshoba Brawler, and we were off to the races. They tried to slow us down with another Chain to the Rocks, but the combination of Ragavan, Bowmasters, and a Kavu we stole with the monkey was way more than they could handle. We didn't get the Drifter kill, but we still got the win. We're 2-1. In our next match, we weren't so fortunate against Burn. Game 1 we kept what looked like an amazing opening 7, only to never find a third land drop. We were quickly scorched like an overcooked steak. Game 2 we had a shot, but it seems most Burn decks are moving away from Wailing Vortex and back to Eidolon of the Great Revel. With every single spell in our deck being 3 mana and under, with the exception of Emrakul, we took way too much damage off 2 Eidolons, so we made it easy for them. We're 2-2 going into our final match, for which we got paired against Tron. We split the first 2 games, so we're going to fast forward to Game 3, where this league ends in the most appropriate way. Take the play, reveal Gigantha, and our 7 has, I think, everything we'd want. We'll keep this. Opponent keeps their 7. We'll start Xander's Lounge, pass turn. They have a Power Plant into a map, so turn 3 Tron likely. Drawn to a basic, we'll fire off a Preordain, Consider, and Otawara. I think we'll bottom the Otawara and top the Consider, play out the Spire Bluff, and we'll pass back. They have the Yours Is Mine, yield to the end step, Consider, Fable. We're going to put that into the graveyard. Draw another Drifter. Untap. Draw into the Scalding Tarn. We'll play that out. I'm going to fetch Basic Island. We're going to play out the Drifter. They crack their map, get a tower. We see a Consider on top. We'll leave that there. Okay, they have Tron. They play out a No Stone and nothing else. Okay, we draw into a Consider. Play out the Swamp. Blood Moon. Scheming Symmetry. Get our Emrakul. Trigger the Drifter. Yes. Who's the Eldrazi deck now? Annihilate 6. This is the perfect way to finish this league. Opponent's at 5 life, plays out a Power Plant, and they scoop it up. 3-2. It's strange to me that I gave them whatever it is they could have desired with that Scheming Symmetry, and they didn't want to keep playing. Odd. This one was fun. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you all again very soon. Until then, remember, Sharing is caring. You know the deal, people. Be well.